Yeah, it wasn't. All right, let's turn to Isaiah chapter 20. Isaiah chapter 20. In the years that the commander-in-chief, who was sent by Sargon, the king of Assyria, came to Ashdod and fought against it and captured it. At that time the Lord spoke to Isaiah the son of Amos, saying, Go and loose the sackcloth from your waist, take off your sandals from your feet. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. Then the Lord said, As my servant Isaiah had walked naked and barefoot for 3 years as a sign and a portent against Egypt and Cush, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians the captives and the Cushites exiles, both the young and the old, naked and barefoot, with buttocks uncovered, nakedness of Egypt. Then they shall be dismayed and ashamed because of Cush their hope and of Egypt their boast. And the inhabitants of this coastland will say in that day, Behold, this is what has happened to those in whom we hope and to whom we fled for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria. And we, how shall we escape? So, as I mentioned from the last week, the chapters that we're studying talks about the God's wrath against all the surrounding countries, including Israel and Judah. While he is actually talking about this chapter 20, it starts with the commander-in-chief and who was sent by Sargon, king of Assyria. Sargon, king of Assyria, is the one who destroyed the Israelites, meaning the north of Israel. You will hear several kings in the Assyrian kings in the Bible, and Sargon is one of those kings that you hear. There's no details of the Sargon, the king of Assyria, but his brother was the one who actually surrounded Samaria for 3 years. But right before the fall of Israel, he actually unthroned his brother, and then he pretty much took over the control of the Assyrian Empire, and literally he's the one who actually finished the Israel. So you will see some of those the kings in the Bible. So let's actually take a look at this time. Let's go to 2 Kings. 2 Kings chapter, let's start with chapter 17. 2 Kings chapter 17. We didn't cover this yet. So we're supposed to actually cover after we finish the Isaiah, but we're just going to cover it for now, just to kind of like make the connections with what the story is about. All right. 2 Kings chapter 17. In the 12th year of Ahaz, the king of Judah, Hoshea, the son of Elah, began to reign in Samaria over Israel. And he reigned 9 years, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, yet not as the king of Israel who were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his Vashar and paid his tribute. But the king of Assyria found treachery in Hoshea, for he had sent messenger to so king of Egypt. So they offered no tribute to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria invaded all the land and came to Samaria, and for 3 years he besieged it. As I just mentioned, Shalmaneser is the one, he's actually in our history book, and Shalmaneser, the fifth, is the one who were actually referenced in this chapter 17. And at the time he was ruling the Assyrian Empire, and he invaded into Israel because Hoshea, which was the last king of Israel, he used to tribute to Assyrian king, and then all of a sudden he stopped the tributing to Assyrian king, but rather he actually went to Egypt. The reason that he went to Egypt is because he was thinking that Egypt has the power so that they could help Israel to defeat the Assyrian Empire, which was the wrong judgment. But he thought at least that he could actually give the tribute to pharaohs in Egypt. He thought that he would be able to save himself. But on contrary, rather than actually getting help from Egypt, later on we're going to just learn about it, but Egypt was destroyed by the Assyrian Empire as well. So this is all in history. It's not only in the book of the Isaiah or the Second Kings in the Bible, but this is the actual history that we learn from outside of the Bible. So continue on. Verse 6. In the 9th years of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria, and he carried the Israelites away to Assyria and placed them in Hala and on the harbor and river of Gozan and in the cities of Medes. And this occurred because the people of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the customs of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel, and in the customs that the king of Israel had practiced. And the people of Israel did secretly against the Lord their God things they were not right. They built for themselves high places in all their towns, from which watchtowers to fortified city. They set up for themselves pillars and Asherim on every high hills and under every green tree. And there they made offering on all the high places, and as the nations did, whom the Lord carried away before them. And they did wicked things, provoking the Lord to anger. And they served idols, of which the Lord had said to them, "You shall not do this." Yet the Lord warned Israel and Judah by every prophet and every seer, saying, "Turn from your evil ways and keep my commitment and my statutes, in accordance with all the law that I commanded your fathers, that I sent to you by my servant the prophets." But they would not listen, but were stubborn, as their father had been, who did not believe in the Lord their God. They despised his statutes and his covenant that he made with his father. And the warning that he gave them, they went after false idols and became false. And they followed the nations that were around them, concerning whom the Lord had commanded them that they should not do like them. And they abandoned all the commandment of the Lord their God, and made for themselves metal image of 2 calves. And they made an Asherah, and worshipped all the host of the heavens, and served the Baal. And they burned their sons and their daughters as an offerings, and used divinations and omens, and sold himself to do evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. None was left but the tribe of Judah only. So this chapter 17 clearly explains why God really punished Israelites, especially of the north of Israel. North of Israel was destroyed, and when Assyrian came down and destroyed them on year BC 722. When God actually brought them to Israel and Samaria to destroy them, Assyrian pretty much locked them down, the entire city of Samaria, or the Israel, for 3 consecutive years, which means no one can coming out of the city, or no one can going into the city. Because of that, they pretty much cut down all the imports or the ways to carry the food into the city. For 3 years of those complete lockdown, obviously they ran out of the food in the city. So what did they do? When they ran out of the food, they started to kill each other. They started to actually eat their own child. That's exactly what they did. And it is explained. Sometimes the people may say, especially people who read the Old Testament, and said, "Oh, God is so cruel. How could God do such a thing?" But what they don't understand is how the Israelites really despised and disobeyed and abandoned God. It is not the God who just always mad at people and destroying people. Not at all. That's the misconceptions that people have. God is always destroying, and he's whipping people, and he's killing people, destroying the countries. That's all they think about. What they don't see is why God did what he did. So think about this. Someone was punched, and the guy who was punched and said "Oh, he punched me," right? And he's reporting to the police and says, "Oh, he punched me." Well, the police has just investigated exactly what happened. When he investigated, he's the one who started it, making him and brought the disaster upon himself because they're provoking other people to punch him, right? So if you really get to the point, why this happen? Why this incident happen? There is a reason behind. So what Israelite did was they were provoking the Lord, and God being patient and giving the warning and sent the message through the seers, prophets, warning them, don't do this. But they completely ignored. Not only they just ignored, they despised the Lord's commands and his name. So he waited and waited and waited, and he decided to discipline. Stop. I can't let this happen again. I can't just let people do this. I have to stop and discipline because he's my child. So what God did was he actually brought the surrounding country, which is he used Assyrian, and bring them down to attack the Israelites, to destroy them. So this is the part that you have to understand. What really caused the Lord to destroy the Samaria? And chapter 17 clearly explains what was the reason behind and what they did. Even though God warned them many times. Some things that we need to keep in mind. What is God's heart at this point? Is God's heart to destroy the Samaritan? Is God's heart to just completely kill the Israelites? No, that's not God's heart. When we discipline our own child, we don't just, like, we don't actually discipline for no reason. We discipline our kids because we want them to grow well. And there's a reason behind why their parents do what they do. That's exactly what was happening. But as I mentioned, Shalmaneser the fifth was the one who actually came down and attacked the Israelites and surrounded locked down the land of Israel for 3 years. But almost at the end of this war, Sargon II, which is brother, literally unthroned the Shalmaneser the fifth, and then he became a king. So he is the one who destroyed the Israelites. So this is the story that we just read in Isaiah chapter 20. So let's come back to Isaiah chapter 20. So now you understand where the chapter 20 lies. This is about the time when Israel, which is the king Israel, which is a Hoshea, was destroyed, and all the land of Israel people was destroyed. So this is sometime around BC 722. And who was ruling at the time that Israel was destroyed? Do you remember who was ruling in the land of Judah at the time? Hezekiah, that you know of. Hezekiah was the king of Judah at the time. But we're not going to cover the Hezekiah in this chapter, but you kind of understand who's who and when is the time when this Isaiah was giving this prophecy. But keep in mind, this was prophesied by Isaiah. This is what will happen, and then God fulfilled it. The difference between Christianity and any other religion is the Bible is made out of promises. This is why we called Old Testament and New Testament. It's Old promise, New promise. What God did differently than any other the books that we see in any other religion, what God did was he prophesied and he tell exactly what will happen, and then he actually fulfilled it throughout the history. And we are seeing those over the years and thousands of years of history. We have seen what God promised, what he fulfilled. So now we get to see thousands of years of history, what God did and how he will fulfill his prophecy. So the reason that we can believe what will happen in the future, then we know that it will happen, is based on thousands of years of history that God actually fulfilled. That's how we know, even though there are things that hasn't happened yet, we know it will happen. Okay, so coming back to Isaiah chapter 20. So God actually told Isaiah to actually be naked, walk on the bare foot for how long? 3 years. 3 years. Isaiah had to do this because God told him to do this. 3 years he was just literally walking around with the naked body with the bare foot. God is showing to the Israelite, this will happen. What will happen? When you go back to chapter 20 and verse 3, it says, Then the Lord said, As my servant Isaiah has walked naked and barefoot for 3 years as a sign and a portent against Egypt and Cush. So what portent against Egypt and Cush? Verse 4 says, So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians, captives, and the Cushites, exiles, both the young and old, naked and barefoot, with buttocks uncovered, and nakedness of Egypt. Then they shall be dismayed and ashamed because of Cush their hope, and of Egypt their boast. What does that mean? Hoshea turned himself over to Cushite and Egypt because he thought Egypt still has the power to destroy the Assyria. That's why he gave the tribute to the Egyptian. So what was he really relying on? What was he really hoping? He was hoping that someone, which is in this case the Cushite and Egyptians, he believed that they have the power to protect them. They have the power to defeat the Assyrian. But did they have the power? No, they did not. That was his own belief. He has his own conviction. They have the power. So, Hoshea was hoping that someone who was higher than him, powerful than him, that he can protect them. But unfortunately, what God did was, really? You think you believe that Egyptians and the Pharaohs and Cushites be able to actually protect you and defeat the Assyrian? Let me show you. What you believe is not true. So God intentionally brought the Assyrian to destroy the Egyptians and Cushite. And not only they were destroyed because of the belief that Hoshea has, but at the same time, when you look at the verse 5 at the end, because of their boast. They were boasting about their own power. They boast about, we can do this. Because they were looking at the glory of the old days of Egypt. Because old ancient day, Egypt had the superpower. They once had that power when Moses was living, right? So they believed, I still have that power. I still have that glory. I can still fight against other countries and I can defeat others. But what they believed was completely destroyed. So, God made sure, I want everyone, don't come back to me that you have not seen this. Because I'm going to have Isaiah walk around with the naked body, with barefoot, and I will prove it to you that everyone has seen him doing this. This is what you will see with Cushite and Egyptians when they are brought as the captives. So, one thing that you need to keep in mind, which I mentioned this several times in the past, does God only use the godly people? No. Think twice. God used anyone. He uses a Pharaoh. He uses Assyrian. He uses other surrounding countries. He uses the Babylonians. He uses a lot of people who doesn't even the people of God. But after God uses them, what happened to them? They were also destroyed. They were also destroyed. So keep that in mind. God is not only using godly people or the believer of God. God could use anyone he wants. That does not mean God is using them because they're righteous. Not at all. Let's turn to Isaiah chapter 31 for a second. Isaiah chapter 31, we're going to read from verse 1 through 3. Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help and rely on horses, who trust in chariot because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong, but do not look to the Holy One of Israel, or consult the Lord. And yet he is wise in bringing disaster. He does not call back his words, but will arise against the house or the evildoers, and against the helpers of those who work iniquity. The Egyptians are man and not God, and their horses are flesh and not spirit. When the Lord stretches out his hand, the helper will stumble, and he who is helped will fall, and they will all perish together. This is very important. This is happening in our daily life as well. When we are facing problems, when we facing difficulties, what do? We try to look for help. We look around. First of all, we look at ourselves first. Can I help myself? Right? We just program ourselves and saying, you know what? If I set my heart, if I set myself, I can do this, then I can do this. Don't give up. Keep doing until you succeed. Right? Aim high. Have a confidence in you. You can do it. What is this? Positive mindset. No matter what situations you're in, let's have a positive mind. Don't fall back. If you're going to fall forward. It's all good. It's really good stuff. But you know what? We're believing in ourselves. We can do this. And if I can't do it myself, then I reach out to the people who can help me. My friends, my family, the people that I know, who has a little more power than me, I can bring them together. With the help of them, I can do this. Let's do it together. That's exactly the story of the Tower of Babel. Let's just build a big tower. Even if God rains down for 40 days, you know what? No problem. We can just build a tower as high as it can, it can reach to the heaven. We can save ourselves. We don't need God's help. Don't worry. We can help ourselves. We can handle this. Yeah. From God's eyes, that is the wickedness. That we believe ourselves that we can do this. We believe ourselves that with the help of others who are a little stronger than me, I can do this. I can help myself. This is the failure. God looks at us. Don't look at that you can do this. No, you cannot. Without my help, you cannot do this. This is what Bible is teaching us. Do not believe yourself. Do not believe your neighbors. Do not believe your allied. Rely on the Lord, who gives you strength. Going back to the same thing I kept saying in John chapter 15. I'm the vine, you're the branch. Can the branch bear fruit by itself? No, it cannot. You cannot bear fruit as a branch. If the branch is cut off from the vine, you can no longer produce the fruits anymore. That's the teachings of the Bible throughout the entire book. Don't rely on yourself. Don't believe that you can do it yourself. Where do we start? The starting point is this. I am the dust of the earth. I am nothing. This is where we start. You see, many of the smart people, especially who are more educated, they believe, you know what? Man can't do anything. If we put our mind, and work together, we can build together, we can do this. This is something that God always warning us. No, you cannot. How many years that Adam had to toil the ground? How many years did he have to toil the ground? Let's go back. How many years he lived? He lived, in chapter 5, 930 years. How many years he toiled the ground? We don't know exactly how long, but for a long time. If I have to toil the ground for 900 years, I'd rather die. I'd rather die. I don't want to toil the ground for 900 years. I really don't. All right? Would you like to toil the ground for 900 years? I don't know. I don't know. You may like it. Well, if you have a machinery that you don't have to do it by yourself, that'll be fine. But if you have to do it on your own, I don't think so. I don't know about that. So what did Adam learn by doing for 900 years, literally? He see himself. I am the dust of the earth. This is who I am. I'm nobody. I'm nothing without God. That's what he learned. And God was teaching. Look at yourself. This is who you are. How dare you to disobey me? That sort of deal. God is clearly teaching us, don't rely on the breath. Be careful. Starting of 20 centuries, you know what was actually came to church? Very dangerous things that it came to the church. That is the teachings of the positive mindset. Teaching people have the positive mind. I'm not saying being negative. That's not what I'm saying. But what positive mindset is teaching that came to church is that you program yourself that you can do things on your own, which is completely contradicting to the teachings of the Bible. The Bible is kept telling us, surrender, give up, come to the Lord, and ask the Lord for help. He will give you the help that you need. Don't try to help yourself. This is a very important teaching. And God is destroying the Egyptians and Cushite intentionally and showing Hosea and all the Israelites in front of their own eyes and how Assyrians are destroying the Egyptians and Cushite. Look what you have relied on. Can they save you? Can they be your shelter as you believed? I will show you they cannot. And I'm going to let you see how they will be brought to Assyria. They will be naked. They will be walking on the bare foot, just like what I am showing you the Isaiah did for 3 years. Remember, if Isaiah had to do this for 3 years, it was a big news. Don't you think? Isaiah is a really famous prophet that everybody knows. But he's walking on a bare foot and he's actually walking naked. It's a big news. It wasn't made it on a headline. Everybody's talking about it. Did you see Isaiah walking on a bare foot and is naked? Everybody heard about it. And this is what God is actually making sure that everyone seeing it. I am doing this. I am making this happen. I assure you this will happen. And then when God really destroyed Egyptians and Cushite, what do you think the Israelite had seen? Surely it was fulfilled. Making no mistake, I am going to show you. Everyone will see it. Everyone will know it. No one can deny this. And I'll make sure I will make this happen. And he did. All right, coming back to chapter 21 this time. Chapter 21. In oracle concerning the wilderness of the sea, as whirlwind in the Negeb swept on, it comes from the wilderness, from a terrible land. A stern vision is told to me. The traitor betrays, and the destroyer destroys. Go up, O Elam, lay siege, O Media. All the sighing he has cursed, I bring to an end. Therefore, my loins are filled with anguish. Pang have seized me, like the pangs of a woman in labor. I am bowed down so that I cannot hear. I am dismayed so that I cannot see. My heart staggers. Horror has appalled me. The twilight I longed for has fallen, turned for me into trembling. They prepare the table, they spread the rugs, and they eat and they drink. Arise, O prince, oil and shield. For though the Lord said to me, Go, set a watchman, let him announce what he sees. When he sees horsemen in pairs, riders on donkeys, riders on camels, let him listen diligently, very diligently. Then he who saw cried out, Upon a watchtower I stand, O Lord, continually by day, and at my post I am stationed the whole night. And behold, here comes the riders, horsemen in pairs. And he answered, Fallen, fallen is Babylon, and all the carved image of her gods. He has shattered to the ground. O my threshed and winnowed one, what I have heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I announce to you. The oracle concerned Duma. One is calling to me from Seir, Watchman, what time of the night? Watchman, what time of the night? The watchman said, Morning comes, and also the night. If you will inquire, inquire. Come back again. The oracle concerning Arabia, in the thickets in Arabia you will lodge, O caravan of Dedanite. To the thirst bring water. Meet the fugitive with bread, O inhabitants of the land of Tema. For they have fled from the sword, from the drawn sword, from the bent bow, and from the press of battle. For though the Lord said to me, Within a year, according to the years of the hire worker, all the glory of the Kedar will come to an end. And the remainder of the archers of the mighty man of the sons of the Kedar will be few, for the Lord, the God of Israel, has spoken. So, when you look at the chapter 20 and chapter 21, you may see something strange here, or you may not. What you see is you actually seen in chapter 20 how the Assyrian will destroy the Egyptians as well as Cushite. Right? Almost at the time when Israel was actually, fall of Israel. So it was around the 722, right? That's when Assyrian were pretty much took over the land of the big area. So let me show you, if I can, the screen. Let me see if I can share my screen. Let me see the screen. Do you see my screen? Okay, so when you see this, the color here, this is the land of Assyria. It's like a skin color, right? And then you see this a green color. You see Tiglath-Pileser the third. The Tiglath-Pileser the third is the father of Shalmaneser as well as Sargon's father. So right before Shalmaneser and as well as Sargon's father pretty much took over the entire land of the Middle East towards the the land of all this big eastern land here. Okay, so he actually expanded all the way here, and then later on, Sargon attacked Egypt, which is we don't even see here. This part is the Egypt area. He expanded those area, so it got really big, right? You see this, like the Sargon the second. He actually worked towards the east, and then he also the red line. He actually brought the Shalmaneser the fifth and the Sargons the second. Actually, they brought they destroyed the Israel, which is the Samaria, and then brought them to like different places of the land that they were actually the ruling. So this was the time when Egypt, Cushite, and Israelites were destroyed, which is back in BC 722. But as you turn to chapter 21, God talks about the fall of Babylon. Do you know when the Babylon was destroyed? Does anybody know when Babylon was destroyed? Who destroyed the Babylon? I think we need to do a little bit of the history history lessons. Right? Okay, so Babylon was destroyed by the Persian. Right? Who was the king who destroyed the Babylon? Was King Cyrus. Right? King Cyrus is the one who destroyed the Babylon. We actually heard about the fall of Babylon from which book? Daniel. Daniel. So let's go to Daniel. Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5. King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the thousands. Belshazzar, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessel of gold and of silver that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem be brought, that the king and his lord, his wives, and his concubines might drink them, from them. Then they brought in the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lord, his wives, and his concubine drank from them. They drank wine and praised the God of gold, and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Immediately the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand. And the king saw the hand as it wrote. Then the king's color changed, and he thought alarmed him. His limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. The king called loudly to bring in the enchanters and Chaldeans and astrologer. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and show me its interpretations shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck and shall be the third rulers in the kingdom." Then All the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing of or make known to the king the interpretations. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his color changed, and his lords were perplexed. The queen, because of the word of the kings and his lord, came into the banqueting halls, and the queen declared, O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you, or your color change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy God in the days of your father. Like the understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father's the king, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, and Chaldeans, and astrologers, and because of an excellent spirit knowledge and the understanding of interpreted dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems, were found in this Daniel, whom the king made Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretations. Then the Daniel was brought in before the king, and the king answered, said to Daniel, You are that Daniel, one of the exile of Judah, from the king my father brought from Judah. I have heard of you that the Spirit of God is in you, and the light and understanding, excellent wisdom, and found in you. Now the wise men, enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not show the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now it is, if you can read writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be the third rulers in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let your gift be for yourself, and give your reward to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the kings and make known to him their interpretations. O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father kingship and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he killed, and whom he would, he kept alive, whom he would, he raised up, and whom he would, he humbled. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened, so that he dealt proudly, he was brought down from his kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. He was driven from among the children of mankind, and his mind was made like that of a beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was fed grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heavens, until he knew that the Most High God ruled the kingdom of mankind, and sets over it whom he will. And you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this, but you have lifted up yourself against the lords of heaven, and the vessel of his house have been brought in before you. And you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have drunk wine from them, and you have praised the God of silvers and gold and of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or know, but God, in whose hand is your breath, and whose are all your ways, you have not honored. Then from his presence the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed: Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parshin. This is the interpretation of the matters. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persian. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed with purple. A chain of gold was put around his neck, and the proclamations was made about him that he should be the third rulers in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar the Chaldean king was killed, and Darius Medes received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Now, this was the last day of Babylon. Do you know what year this was? BC 738. This was a BC 738. Let's think about this. Chapter 20, God talked about the fall of Assyrian. Not fall of Assyrian. When Assyrian actually conquered the land of Israel, Egypt, and Cush, right? That was about 722 BC. And now, he's all of a sudden, he jumped. How far did he jump? If the Babylon was destroyed by the Persian, 738, what is the gap between the two chapters? 722 to 538. What is it? $16? $722 and 538, 184 years. There's a gap between the chapter 20 and 21. He jumped for 184 years. Significant jump. Because remember, this is the prophecy that Isaiah has received. Isaiah has not seen the rise of the Babylon yet. Because neither Israel nor Judah was destroyed by the Assyrian yet. Not to mention, later on, that Nebuchadnezzar, he rose and he destroyed the Assyrian. And then, after that Assyrians was destroyed by the Babylonians, right? Babylonian Empire was destroyed by the Persian. So there's a big gap, which Isaiah never seen. So he is prophesying that will happen almost 200 years later. This is a significant prophecy. From our perspective, obviously, because we don't know the history, we don't know when was destroyed, obviously we don't really care. So we just read from chapter 20 and 21, so we see no difference whatsoever. But when you understand the history, what the prophecy that Isaiah has received and gave it to Israel, do you think Israelites or Judeans understood any of this prophecy? No one understood. No one understood what he was talking about. Because, as I mentioned, still, of course, Assyrian Empire was strong at the time, but he has seen the Babylonian will eventually took over the Assyrian Empire, which no one even thought about, because Assyrian was so strong at the time. Not to mention, this rising star, which is the Babylonian Empire, it will be destroyed by the Persian. Who knows? 200 years later, what would happen? All right? No one paid attention. Imagine, if God is giving you the prophecy that will happen 200 years later, after you die, do you care? I don't care. Who cares what would happen 200 years after I die? That's even my children's going to be gone by that time, right? How many generations has to pass? I don't know. Nobody pay attention. Right? But Isaiah is giving the prophecy of like 200 years later. What would happen? It's like everyone's joking. It's like, what are you talking about, man? But God is making it clear. This will happen. No one, including Isaiah, has seen this was fulfilled. But you know what? We know it happened. People who saw this happen was fulfilled understood at that time. But listen, coming back to chapter 21 again, look at this. Verse 9. So, right before that, God said, make sure the watchmen on the watchman tower, where are they? Where are they? They're in the fortress of the Babylonian, the fortress. That's where the watchmen are standing. And what did they see? Persians coming. The King Cyrus was coming towards them. That's what this watchman will see. And he was crying out, right? And what did he say? Verse 9. And behold, here come riders, horsemen in pairs. Who's coming? Persian. And he answered, fallen, fallen is Babylon, and all the carved image of her gods he has startled to the ground. So the watchman is saying, now Babylon is gone now. We're destroyed by this Persian. Remember, Babylon in the biblical context is more than the country of Babylon. Babylon represents the kingdom of evil. That's what Babylon is representing. So, Babylon was destroyed in BC 538 and was gone after that, right? No one remembers the Babylon. You hear the word of Babylon, but that country, Babylon, disappeared, right? More than 250 years ago. 2,500 years ago. It's gone. But what did he say? Fall, fall of Babylon. Where did you hear this shouting? Where did you hear this shouting? You heard this shouting somewhere else. Where did you see this? Revelation. All right, let's go to Revelation. I mean, where could it be, right? Revelations chapter 18. Actually, before we go to Babylon's story, let's go to chapter 14 first. Revelations chapter 14. We're going to read from verse 6. Then I saw another angel flying directly overhead with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people. And he said with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth and sea and the springs of waters. Another angel, a second, followed, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the great, she who made all nations drink the wine of the passions of her sexual immorality. What is he saying? Fallen, fallen to Babylon. So when you actually go to chapter 18, chapter 18, Revelation, after this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his glory. And he called out with a mighty voice. Fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons. Hound for every unclean spirit, a hound for every unclean bird, a hound for every unclean and detestable beast. This is the ultimate fall of Babylon, which at the end, when did this happen? When did this happen? When you look at chapter 16, chapter 16 is starting point of when God pours the 7 bowls onto the earth. When he pours the wrath on earth, that's when the stronghold of a man will be completely destroyed. Whoever was hiding in the stronghold of the Babylon will fall, ultimately completely destroyed. People who trusted in themselves, people who trusted their feast, people who trusted their knowledge, people who trusted their wisdom, people who trusted themselves, and who followed the demon will be completely destroyed. And God is making sure, giving the double prophecy. Not only you will see the Babylon is falling, but at the end, the ultimate Babylon will fall at the end. Coming back to Isaiah chapter 21. And then he gave the prophecies to Duma as well as Arabia. Now we're going to move on to chapter 22. The oracle concerning the valley of visions. What do you mean that you have gone up, all of you, to the housetop, you who are full of shoutings, tumultuous cities, exultant town? Your slain are not slain with the sword or dead in battle. All your leaders have fled together. Without the bow, they were captured. All of you who were found were captured, though they had fled far away. Therefore I said, look away from me. Let me weep bitter tear. Do not labor to comfort me concerning the destructions of the daughters of my people. For the Lord God of hosts has a day of tumult and trampling and confusions in the valley of visions, the battling down of the walls, and the shouting to the mountains. And Elam bore the quiver, and chariots and horsemen, and Kurd uncovered the shield. Your choicest valley were full of chariots, and the horsemen took their stand at the gate. He has taken away the covering of Judah. In that day you looked to the weapons of the house of the forest. You saw that the breaches of the city of David were many. You collected the waters of the lower pool, and you counted the house of Jerusalem, and you broke down the house of fortified the wall. You made a reservoir between the 2 walls for the waters of the old pool. But you did not look to him who did it, or see him who planted it long ago. In that day the Lord God of hosts called weeping and mourning for boldness and wearing sackcloth. And behold, joy and gladness, killing oxen and slaughter sheep, eating flesh and drink wine. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. The Lord of hosts has revealed himself in my ears. Surely this iniquity will not be atoned for until you die, says the Lord God of hosts. Thus says the Lord God of hosts, come, go to the steward, to Shebna, who is over the house of, and say to him, what have you do here, and whom have you here? That you have cut out here a tomb for yourself, you who cut out a tomb on the height, and carved a dwelling for yourself in a rock. Behold, the Lord will hurl you away violently, O you strong man. He will seize firm hold on you. And whirl you around and throw you like a ball into the wide land. There you shall die, and there shall be your glorious chariots, and you shame of your master's house. I will thrust you from your office, and you will be pulled down from your stations. In that day I will call my servant Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, and I will clothe him with your robe, and I will bind your sash on him, and will commit your authority to his hand. He shall be a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. And I will place on his shoulder the key of the house of David. He shall open, and none shall shut, and he shall shut, none shall open. And I will fasten him like a peg in a secure place. He will become a throne of honor to his father's house. And they will hang on him the whole honor of his father's house, the offsprings and issue, every small vessel from the cups of all the flagons. In that day, declares the Lord of hosts, and peg that was fastened in a secure place will give way, and it will be cut down and fall, and the Lord that was on it will be cut off, for the Lord has spoken. So, God is actually giving the warnings, and he gave the oracles. And when you look at the verse 2, you who are full of shoutings, tumultuous cities, and exultant town, you slain are not slain with the sword or dead in battle. When they were having fun, when they were having parties, because things were good, but when the disaster comes, when God started to destroy them, they just ran away. They just ran away. When God is about to destroy the Jerusalem, but when he's about to slash the Jerusalem, verse 4, this is the key. This is the key that you have to remember. Therefore I said, look away from me. Let me weep bitter tears. Do not labor to comfort me concerning the destructions of the daughters of my people. What is this? God is striking down the Jerusalem. But he said, don't look at me. Look away from me. Because I am crying. I'm crying with the bitter tears. Do not labor to comfort me. Don't even try to comfort me. Because it's so painful. Concerning the destructions of the daughters of my people. Do not try to comfort me. Do not try to look at me. Because I'm so bitterly painful that I am destroying my own daughter. That I have to do this. I don't know if you ever experienced this, but when your parents, when you're young, disciplined you, and when they actually hit you, when they actually lift up the rod, do you think they were just enjoying to hitting you? They were so happy they were just hitting you? No. As much as you're painful, because you're the one who's hit by the rod, but you know what? Your parents who's doing this is even more painful that they have to do this. They don't do this in the joyful mind. It's a bitter. When you hit your own child, it's painful that you have to do this because this is not something that you want. You don't want to do this, but you have to do this. And until you become a parent, you don't understand your heart. when you discipline your own child. It's not easy. As a parent, it's a very difficult thing. They have to do this. But they know it has to be done. You can't let this you can't ignore it. You have to discipline. Why are you disciplining? To destroy your own child? No. You want to correct their behavior. You want to bring them back. You want them to be right. You want them to be better. Not to destroy them, but to discipline them and train them. Teach them how to do things right. That's why the parents do what they do to discipline their child. Of course, they're a child abusing their own child, of course. Right? Not the right parents. There are people like that. Men are like that. But not with the Lord. Not with the Lord. This is the heart of the Lord. If you have to really capture it, if you have to underline, this is the line that you have to underline. And this is what you really have to understand, the God of heart. Look away from me. Let me weep bitter tears. He's crying because of pains. You have no idea how much pain that I have in my heart, that I have to discipline you, that I have to destroy you, that I have to see you being destroyed. You have no idea. How many people do you think understand God's heart by reading this verse? Literally, nobody's paying attention to this line. Nobody. It's just a one line and one verse. We just read it, skip it, done. But this is the key. If you're missing this kind of keyword, you don't understand Bible. Don't ever say that you know God or His heart, because you don't. As I mentioned, as you read the Bible, reading is not that important. Reading His heart is important. Imagine, there's two sides. When parents discipline their child, when you bring the rod and when you hit your child, what do you think your child is going to remember? Oh, my mom and my dad are really disciplining me. Oh, he really loves me. Do you think your child think that? No. What do you think they will remember? The pain and my parents hit me is all they're going to remember. They never going to understand your love. They never understand your pain. Think about it. Bring back your own faint memories from your childhood. What do you remember when your parents disciplined you? What's in your head? Love? I don't think so. All you remember is the pain and what they did to you is what you remember. That became your pain. That became your scars. We don't remember God really loved me or our parents really loved me. That's the part that we don't understand. From that perspective, do you think Israel or Judean knows that God loved them so much that He had to do this? Forget it. What do you think? Remember, God hates us. He always, destroying us is all they remember. How do I know? It's very simple. I show you. Let's go to Malachi. Malachi chapter 1. Malachi is the last book of the Old Testament. I'm going to read from verse 2. I have loved you, says the Lord. But you say, how have you loved us? What did God say? I loved you. What is the Israelite saying? What are you talking about? When? When did you love me? I don't remember. I remember you just destroyed us multiple times. That's all I can remember. When did you love me? They don't remember. They don't see anything that God loved. Not to mention, he was crying with the bitter tears. Nobody remembers. Nobody knows. When did you love me? I don't remember. That's all they remember. What love? I don't know. You hated us. You hit me. You destroy me. And is it any different for most of the Christians as they read the Old Testament? Before you actually start coming to this Bible sharing, when you were reading the Old Testament, what was your impression of God? Was your impression of God was so kind and gentle, lovely, and, is that kind of things that you're seeing in the Old Testament? I don't think so. Your view of God was cruel. He was always mad. He was always a crazy man or a crazy God. Cold-hearted. Right? That's the kind of impressions that we had about God. Why? Because we only look at it from child perspective. We don't look at it from God's perspective at all. We don't try. We don't care about his pain. We don't care about how he feels. We don't care about any of what he sees and feels. That's what most Christians think about. All they care about is about me. Have you taken care of me? Did you bless me? Did you love me? What did you do to me? Is all they care about. What they don't care about, how did he feel? What did he have to do? Why did he have to do what he did? People pay no attention at all, or try to understand his feeling, or try to understand his pain, try to understand any of his heart at all. Let me tell you this. If I spend 2 hours then explain God's heart, I will pinpoint this one verse. If you understand this one particular verse, you can forget about everything what I said. If you can understand this one verse. Put this in your heart. Not by reading it, but understand what God feels. Do you see his cry? Do you see his tears? Do you see his pain? If you see it, you got it. You learned what you need to learn. But if you don't get it, and if you understood everything else except this, you wasted your 2 hours of your time. Coming back, what did they do? I'm going to read from verse 9. And you saw that the breaches of the city of David were many. You collected the waters of the lower pool, and you counted the house of Jerusalem, and you broke down the house to fortify the wall. You made a reservoir between the two walls for the waters of the old pools. But you did not look to him who did it, or see him planted it long ago. What does that mean? When Judah was completely destroyed by the Babylonians, the walls, the fortress has been, crumbled down, right? They have no water. So what they did was they made the reservoir between the two walls, and that's where they draw the water from to drink. But you know what? They don't remember. God is the one who prepared this a long time ago. Nobody remembers him. Who provided this? They don't care. Oh, he was there all along. We made it. The water was always there. Who provided water? I don't know. The water was always there. What does that mean? Nobody cares about who provided that water. Nobody cares. That's exactly what he's saying. You made the reservoir between the two walls for the waters of old pool, but you did not look to him who did it, or see him who planted it long ago. Continue on. In that day, the Lord God of hosts called for weeping and moaning, for boldness and wearing sackcloth. And behold, joy and gladness, killing oxen and slaughtering sheep, eating flesh and drinking wine. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. You know why? What do? Let's enjoy today. Who cares about tomorrow? Let's have a party. There's no tomorrow. When we die, that's the end. Let's just booze. Have a fun. Let's do what we want. There's no judgment. We'll eat today. We enjoy our life. And tomorrow we'll die. That's okay. I'm going to die gloriously. Do you see these people? I see this everywhere. I see these people everywhere. Because what they don't know, at the end, there's judgment. They don't believe in it. They don't believe it exists. They don't believe it is true. So, let's enjoy. Let's enjoy today. Let's have a fun. Life is short. Let's have fun. That's exactly what people do. The Lord of hosts has revealed himself in my ears. Surely this iniquity will not be atoned for you until you die, says the Lord God of hosts. Listen to what God is saying. Listen to his tone. What is he saying? Do you think he's mad? Absolutely. He's really mad. You think there's no judgment? I'll tell you, your iniquity will not be atoned until you die. And you will see, after you die, what's coming towards you. Imagine, why people do you think they kill themselves or kill other people? Because they don't believe anything after death. Death is the end of everything. Ending the life is the end of the tunnel. There's nothing more. There's nothing after. That's the end. When we die, we're done. There's no life after death. What are you talking about? Have you seen this? Have you experienced this? No. What are you talking about? There's nothing exists. It's all fake. It's only imagination. It's what all the weak people are talking about. There's no judgment. Yeah. You can believe whatever you want to believe. It is everyone's prerogative to believe what they want to believe. But one thing to keep in mind, it doesn't matter what you believe. What will come, will come. Whether you want it or ignore it, doesn't really matter. It's up to you. You can ignore it. Imagine, let's say you're driving a car, right? And there's the car in front of you, right? You say, nothing will happen, nothing will happen, nothing will happen. You can believe whatever you want to say. Whatever you want to believe, nothing will happen. Guess what? You're going to get crushed. No matter what you want to believe. There's two things. You can believe anything you want. But what will really come, you cannot change. How do we know? As I mentioned, God showed us in thousands of years of history. He made a promise, fulfill, promise, fulfill, promise, fulfill. This will come. This is what will happen. This is how we know whatever he said will be true and will come. Once again, it is up to you, and it is up to everyone to believe what they want to believe. What doesn't change? What he said will come doesn't change. And then people are saying, though, says the Lord God of hosts, come, go to this steward, to Shebna, who's over the household, and say to him, what have you to do here, and whom have you here, that you have cut out here a tomb for yourself? You cut out a tomb on the height, and carve a dwelling for yourself in a rock. Behold, the Lord will hurl you away violently. O you strong man, will seize a firm hold on you, and whirl you around and around, and throw you like a ball into a wide land. There you shall die, and there shall be your glorious chariots, you shame of your master's house. I will thrust you from your office, and you will be pulled down from your stations. Do you know who this Shebna is? Do you have any idea who this Shebna is? Probably don't. Let's go to 2 Kings. Second Kings chapter 18. We're going to read from verse 13. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified city of Judah and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, I have done wrong, withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear. And the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and the treasuries of the king's house. In that time Hezekiah stripped the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorpost that Hezekiah king of Judah had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria sent the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and Rabshakeh with a great army
from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. And they went up and came to Jerusalem. When they arrived, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is on the highway to the washers of field. And when they called for the king, there came out to him Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna, the secretary, and Joah, the son of Asaph, the recorders. And Rabshakeh said to them, Say to Hezekiah, Thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, on what do you rest this trust of yours? Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you now trust that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you are trusting now in Egypt, and broken reed of staff, which will pierce, and hand of my any man's who lean on it, such as Pharaoh king of Egypt, to all who trust in him. But if you say to me, We trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and altar Hezekiah has removed, the saying to Judah and to Jerusalem, You shall worship before this altar in Jerusalem? Come now, make a wager with my master the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses if you are able on your part to set ridden on them. How often can you repulse a single captain among the least of my master's servants, when you trust in Egypt for chariot and for horsemen? Moreover, is it without the Lord that I have come up against this place to destroy it? The Lord said to me, Go up against this land and destroy it. Then Eliakim the son of Hilkiah and Shebna and Joah said to the Rabshakeh, Please speak to your servant in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in language of Judah within the hearing of the people who are on the wall. But Rabshakeh said to them, Has my master sent me to speak these words to your master and to you, and not to the man sitting on the wall, who are doomed with you to eat their own dung and to drink their own urines? Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in a loud voice in the language of Judah, Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Though, says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you out of hand. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord by saying, The Lord will surely deliver us, and this city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for though, says the king of Assyria, Make your peace with me and come out to me, then each one of you will eat of his own wine, and each one of his own fig trees, and each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyard, a land of olive trees and honey, that you may live and not die. And do not listen to Hezekiah when he leads you by saying, The Lord will deliver us. Has any of God of the nations ever delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? When are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hannah, and Eva? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of the lands have delivered their land out of my hands, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of myself? But the people were silent and answered him not a word, for the king's command was, Do not answer him. Then Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, Joah the son of Asaph, the recorder, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn, and told him the word of the Rabshakeh. What you hear is two people. One is who? Shebna, and who? Eliakim. All right? Now, we're going to turn to chapter 19. We don't have time to read everything, so I'm just going to read just a few verses here. As soon as the king Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes and covered himself with the sackcloth and went into the house of the Lord and sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary and the senior priest covered with sackcloth to the prophet Isaiah the son of Amos. They said to him, Thus says Hezekiah, this day is the day of distress, of rebuke, and of disgrace. Children have come to the point of birth, and there is no strength to bring them forth. It may be that the Lord your God heard all the words of Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to mock the living God, and will rebuke the words of that the Lord your God has heard. Therefore, lift up your prayer for the remnant that is left. When the servant of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah, Isaiah said to him, Say to your master, Thus says the Lord, do not be afraid because the word that you have heard, with which the servant of the king of Assyria have revealed me. Behold, I will put a spirit in him, so that he shall hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. And later, he actually killed. So this is the story that you'll be able to actually connect between the 2 Kings and Isaiah story together. This is where it joins together. The story of Shebna and Eliakim. Unfortunately, when you look at the book, the story to Shebna, who is over the household, and say to him, What have you to do here, whom you have here, that you have cut out here a tomb for yourself? You have cut out a tomb on the height and carved a dwelling for yourself in a rock. Behold, the Lord will hurl you away violently, O young strong man, you strong man. He will seize from hold on you, and what you around and round, and throw you like a ball into a wide land. There you shall die, and there will be a glorious chariot, you shame of your master's house. I will thrust you from your office, and you will be pulled down from your stations. In that day I will call my servant Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and I will clothe him with your robe, and will bind your sash on them, and will commit your authority to his hand, and he shall be the father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. So what you will see here is Shebna was not a faithful servant. He was a very man of greed, and he only lived for himself. Even though, just by looking at the 2 Kings in chapter 18, he looked like someone who really looked faithful in front of the Assyrian, but in turns, he was not. Eliakim, on the other hand, was a faithful man. That's why God said, I'm going to take this authority from you and give it to the Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah. Because Eliakim was the faithful man, which you don't see in the 2 King, chapter 18 and 19. Here's the things that you have to keep in mind. We can fool others. We can pretend that we're faithful Christians. We can show as if you're different than others in front of other people. But you know what? You cannot hide from the Lord, because God sees your heart. God knows what you're thinking. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you go after. You don't know what I'm going after. You have no idea. But you know what? God sees you. God sees me. God knows my heart than anyone else. And God will judge at the end. This is something that we need to keep in mind. And then he said, verse 22,
I will place on his shoulder the key of the house of David. He shall open, and none shall shut, and he shall shut, none shall open. If God opens the door, can anyone close it? If God closed the door, can anyone open it? No one can. Whatever he planned will be fulfilled. But you know what? You hear this somewhere else. Do you know where you see? Let's turn to Revelations chapter 3 again. Revelations chapter 3. We're going to read from verse 7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, write the words of the Holy One, the true One, who has the key of David, who opens, no one will shut, who shuts, and no one opens. Who is this? Jesus. Then who do you think that Isaiah is referring to? It's Jesus. Who can open the door? Jesus opened the door. No one can close it. When Jesus closed the door, who can open it? No one can. Whatever he plans will be fulfilled, no matter what you do. And then, I will fasten, coming back to Isaiah chapter 22, verse 23, I will fasten him like a peg in a secure place. To who? To Eliakim. And he will become a throne of honor to his father's house. So God is saying, I'm going to make him like a peg in a secure place. Will never be shaken. And they will hang on him the whole honor of his father's house, the offsprings and issue, every small vessels from the cups of all the flagons. But the last word, verse 25, pay attention to what he's saying. In that day, declares the Lord of hosts, the peg that was fastened in a secure place will give away. Even if God is going to put the peg on the very strong ground, it will be strong that everyone's going to hold on to. But even with that peg, one day it will give away. One day it will give away. And it will be cut down and fall. And the Lord that was on it will be cut off, for the Lord has spoken. So, what is he saying? Nothing in this world, even though you are like peg and everyone is holding on to, it will not last forever. It will not last forever. Eventually, it will give away. We all are. We all are imperfect. No one in this land is perfect. That's the things that we have to understand. Before the Lord, where nobody's righteous. Nobody's a stronghold. Even though today we may be like a peg, but one day we'll give away. This is why we have to hold on to the Lord, not on my own. That is the teachings of the Bible. All right, so I'm going to just finish up to chapter 22. Any question? Anyone else?